One of the brachas that we give a chassan and kala at the Shafier brachas is Sameach Tisamach Reim Ahuvim. Be joyful and be happy, beloved friends. Kesamechacha Yitzircha Began Eden Mikedem, as Hashem made happy, made joyful Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. You should have that same type of joy. And keep in mind that this bracha comes from Chazal. It was written by Amoraim, maybe even Tanaim, and every word is measured and very carefully used. The words Reim Ahuvim, beloved friends, is a very unusual expression. And normally you assume that means that everyone in the audience loves these people and that they're friends, and Rashi says it's not pshat. Reim Ahuvim, what does it mean, beloved friends? HaChassan v'Kala. The Chassan and Kala, Shem Reim, who are friends, HaAhuvim zeh et zeh, who love each other. Reim Ahuvim means the Chassan and Kala are best friends who love each other, and the bracha we give you is that you should have the same joy that Hashem gave to Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. And the problem is that this is a little bit strange. Why? Because if you were to define a marriage, you would define it as a commitment, as a bond. I mean, just listen to the way that Ramban defines a marriage. The pasuk says, "The davak alkein yazov ish es aviv es imo." A man will leave his father and his wife, v'davak beishto, and cling to his wife. So the Ramban explains that there is a closeness of husband and wife that is unparalleled in the universe. There's no other relationship, not to a father, not to a mother, not to a son. A husband and wife in a proper union are so connected, so bonded, that there is no parallel relationship. So it sounds a little bit funny to call them friends. I mean, friends, you have a friend, you have a buddy, you have a friend, a good friend, a close friend. But when Chazal are defining the chassan and kala, or defining a marriage, they're defining it as best friends who love each other, and it doesn't quite sound to be what the definition of a marriage is. It doesn't quite sound to be what a union between husband and wife is. Now, we spent some time in the past sessions describing some of the tools that Hashem gave us to create a bond, to create the connection. One is something called infatuation, which just happens. The other is romantic love. That is something that a husband and wife must constantly be working on, constantly spending time together, going out once a week, mini vacations, spending time together as a couple to create that sense of romance, because that's a very important tool. Physical relations are also a very important tool to build that connection, that bond. Attraction is a very important tool. Last week we discussed appreciation. And these are all tools, but here's the point. All of these tools come to a matara, come to a point. The point of all of these tools are that a husband and a wife should join together totally and completely. And if you'd like to know what the union is, it has nothing to do with romantic love, nothing to do with attraction. It's a bonding, it's a connection. Avram Avinu said, Hine na yadati, now I know, behold, sorry, you're a beautiful woman. When he was crossing the river, when it was time to go down to Mitzrayim, and it was time to look, then he saw, oh, you're a beautiful woman. Meaning what? Up until that point, he didn't look. Rashi explains it wasn't tznius, because of tznius of both of them, he didn't look. Meaning to say, Avram Avinu didn't look at his wife, didn't know what she looked like. I have a little question to ask you. Isn't attraction a very important part of a marriage? Isn't attraction, beauty, something that Hashem put into a woman and a husband to be attracted to that to help create the bond, the connection? And I believe the answer is that it is true for us mortals, and it's a very important tool for us regular people. But Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu were on a totally different level. And even though, again, as I mentioned, that the Maral says it was never a bond of love and connection between husband and wife as it was between Sarah and Avram, nevertheless, they didn't need the tools that you and I need. They were on a totally different level. The others were almost, we have to learn from them, but they're in a different league, and they didn't need the normal tools that we need. The point is that their connection was way, way above. And if you'd like to understand the ultimate goal, it's not romantic love, it's not attraction, it's not infatuation, it's a bond, it's a connection of pure dedication one to the other, where my interests are, what could I do for my spouse? My job is to support, my job is to be a friend, my job is to help. What could I do for my spouse? Meaning a friend. And when Chazal use that expression, friends who love each other, it's because that is the definition. That's the goal. The ultimate goal of it all is to be a support, to be there for the other, one committed to the other, sharing a life together. And when you look back after 10 years, after 20 years, and you see what it is that you built together, that is ultimately the bond, but it's a bond that's pure. We use the tools. If you don't use the tools, you're being very foolish because you'll never get there. And if you think, no, I'm so holy, I don't need, intimacy. It's not a big thing in my marriage. You're making a big, big mistake. And if you don't think you need to go out with your wife, she doesn't need attention. She doesn't need my compliments. She doesn't need my appreciation. She knows. Well, if you're going to make that mistake, you're also going to pay the price. Because we mortals need the tools, and that's why Hashem gave us them. But again, all of these tools lead to that ultimate connection of a support, of a friend, re'im ahuvim, friends who love each other, best friends dedicated to one each other, best friends supporting one another. And if you'd like an illustration, and sometimes it's important to hear an illustration of what a proper marriage is like, Rav Shlomo Eger in his Shilas and Tshuvas writes about his father. Rabbi Eger was the Gaon, was the leader of the Klal Yisrael. And after many, many years of marriage, Rabbi Eger's wife died. And a while passed, and someone suggested a shidduch. It was long enough after the Petira, someone suggested a marriage potential for Rabbi Eger. And his son writes that Rabbi Eger's answer was like this: how could I even think about a shidduch? How could I even think about another woman? When she left me, I was bereft. This was a woman I sought counsel with. This was a person I shared my life with. When she left, there's nothing left. I can't eat, I can't drink. My stomach can't hold food down. I can't even make a bracha achrona. I could barely daven without breaking down. I could barely learn. How could you ask me to forget her? How could you ask me to marry someone else? Rabbi Eger was a Gaon, the leader of the Jewish nation. And he was a very, very holy, pious person. But with those words, he defined what a marriage is about. It's a bond, it's a connection, friends who are dedicated, friends who love each other, and ultimately that is the goal. Now, that being said, I have a little question to ask. There is a mitzvah of Ahavta L'Recha Kamocha, and that's probably the source of much of our obligation to do chesed, etc. Here's the question: does that mitzvah apply to a spouse? Does it? Okay. Here's another one: Losana isha samito. Do not oppress. Do not cause tsar to another Jew. Does that apply to a spouse? Yes. Okay. Malbim pnei chavero b'rabim. That doesn't apply, right? That can't possibly apply to a spouse. That's like other people, right? I mean, right? Lashon hara, right? Lo seilach rachel b'mecha. That for sure does not apply to a spouse, right? Well, yeah, it does apply. Every one of them apply, but not only do they apply far more. Aniye ircha kodmim is a concept. Conceptually, it's a given that you're going to take care of your spouse. All of the rules of chesed. You ever notice that your girls are very good about going to other people's house and doing chesed? And ask them to do the same thing in your house. Come on, Mom. Why is that? I don't know why exactly we get used to our family. We let our hair down. We don't have the same sort of, and when you begin to study the way husbands and wives act to one another, you would assume that, I don't know, it's the mitzvahs don't apply. So I want to say a chiddush, or maybe a big chiddush. But that big chiddush is your spouse is supposed to be your best friend. Your spouse is supposed to be your best friend. Now, what that means in plain language is you act to your spouse as you act to a friend. So for instance, friends don't scold, friends don't lecture, friends don't belittle, friends don't nag, badger, pester, irritate, or annoy till they get their way. Friends don't disregard, ignore, poke fun at, mock another friend. That's not the way friends behave. And anytime you find yourself acting that way, you have to realize that I have stepped outside the confines of a marriage. I'm now acting in a different way. And if you'd like to work on your marriage, I believe that this is one area that's very, very significant and very important. I always love it. Comes Erev Yom Kippur, when guys start searching. Taka, what do I have to do tshuva on? What did I do wrong during the year? So invariably, I just love to ask, tell me, are you married? If you're married, I guarantee I can show you a host, an entire trainload of stuff. Because in the heavy traffic of life, I said, she said, before you know it, I guarantee there's a lot to repair, a lot of tshuva to be done. And one of the things that you have to really focus on and really understand is that your role is to be a friend to your spouse. You're supposed to be a support, you're supposed to be a friend, you're supposed to be doing chesed to your spouse. My Rabbi Yeshiva Zatzal used to say, you have to practice doing a chesed every day. Every day practice doing a chesed, so you'll be trained in being a giving, other-centered person. So I'd like to give you an exercise to improve your shalom bayis. Ready for this one? Very easy one. Every day, do an act of chesed for your spouse. Choose something and do it for your spouse. Now, ladies, I know you're going to say, well, come on, I cook and I clean, I do laundry. I know, I got that. There's no question that that's true. And I know your husband appreciates it because he's taken a list, he's written it down, and he's reviewing it 10 minutes a day, and he gets you, I got that. But I'm talking about something else. Something that's a little special, something that's a little unusual. Find something and do a chesed every day for your spouse, and I guarantee it's going to have an interesting impact on your marriage. Number one, you're going to realize my job is to be a friend to my spouse, and your spouse is going to appreciate it as well. And you have to find, each person has their own things that are important to them. Each person has their own things that they're into. You have to find something that your spouse values, that your spouse cares about, and do it for them for one reason, to show my spouse something of kindliness, of goodness. And if you can't find anything, and you're really short, I'll give you an easy one. We human beings hate criticism and love compliments. Love compliments. I went to the Cheshbon as a high school Rebbe, and I realized that within the past 10 years I had received 2 compliments, and one was my father told me how good I did grill the chicken. 10 years, and if you think I'm being facetious, only half being facetious. We human beings crave compliments. And I know you're working on appreciation, and I know you wrote down a list, and I know you're working on that, but here's another thing to do. Compliment your spouse. Find something not necessarily they do for you, but find something that they do well, that they've done well, and say the words, wow, you really did that well, that's great. You're really good at this. You're really well. Now, why should you do that? Because first of all, you're doing the greatest chesed in the world. Do you know how much we hunger for compliments? Do you know how happy a human being is when he receives a compliment? And more than that, the minute you compliment me, I can't resist. I just feel something different. I taught high school for 15 years, and I used to drill the guys about people skills, people skills, people skills, people skills. As a matter of fact, I used to push Dale Carnegie's book. I would only do it privately because I didn't know if it was really that accepted. And then I read later Rav Miller Zatzal in his book writes how good it is, how significant a book, and it's a book worth reading, finding how to win friends and influence people. In any case, I used to hack the guys Yom and Valayla about the importance of compliments, the importance of compliments. And I knew I did a good job because every week or so we had like a little routine where I'd break the shir into 2 groups, and the guys in each group had to answer the questions, and whichever group got more points, they got to, I think they got to take the Rebbe out for pizza. This is amazing. You got to appreciate it. That was the schluss. But this was not a joke. So, and it was fiercely competitive. The 11th graders, and they were fiercely competitive. My job was to be the judge. I would ask questions, and each team would have a chance to answer, this team and that team, and I would keep score, and whoever got the highest mark got to go out after. Okay, fine. In any case, I realized I was doing a decent job when I turned to this group, this team, and I said, okay, the question is da-da-da-da, and the team captain said, before I say a word, I want to compliment the judge on a very brilliantly worded question, very articulate, very to the point, and wonderful. And as he's saying it, and I said, oh, I know what you're doing, I know what you're doing. You know what he was doing? He was actually learning and doing what I taught him, which is, if you compliment a human being, there's a sense in their heart of, wow, joy, happiness, and they love you. If you want to win friends, give them compliments. If you want to win enemies, give them discouraging words, give them criticism, put them down. And by the way, just because it ends with a ha, 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 doesn't stop it from being criticism. And if you want to gather huge amount of enemies, train your tongue to criticize people. If you'd like to gather friends, train your tongue to compliment people. And in a marriage, compliments are mighty, mighty important. You know, my wife no longer asks me, years ago, she would no longer ask me whether a food tasted good or not. She wouldn't ask me. And the kids would say, why don't you ask Abba? Oh, I will just say it tastes delicious. Now, why do I do that? I will never tell my wife it's too salty. Why am I so careful? So I'll tell you why. When your wife asks you how something tastes and you say, not so great, she doesn't hear that the food tastes not so great. She hears that she has failed as a wife. She hasn't done a good job. She is And if you think I'm wrong, just watch. Just try it. Just try criticizing another human being. Just try criticizing especially your spouse, and you'll see the effects are frightening. And try the flip side. Just try complimenting. Notice something. It has to be genuine, but train your eye to find things that your spouse does well. Train your eye to see these things and mention them. And if you give a genuine, sincere compliment, I guarantee the heart of that person you're complimenting is going to change. And if it's your spouse, so much more so. And the first rule of being a friend is to find what your friend does well, support them, do a chesed for them every day. And I have one more piece of advice, and that is you should daven for your spouse. You should daven for shalom bayis. Baruch Hashem, we're married now almost 30 years, and I'm very happy. I think even my wife, who's not here to deny it, is also very happy. But I'd also like you to know that 3 times a day I daven for shalom bayis. Why am I so afraid? Why am I so afraid? Because I've dealt with enough couples to know. I dealt with a man who said he was married 16 years. He didn't even know what a shalom bayis problem was. He didn't even know about the issue. He lost his job. He changed. She changed. 6 months later, he was divorced. And you realize that this thing called shalom bayis is pretty delicate. And we need siyata d'shmaya. So certainly it's a very wise idea to daven for shalom bayis. But much more important, daven for the betterment of your spouse. Ladies, it means in the morning, spend 10 minutes asking Hashem, please Hashem, let my husband succeed. Let him do well in business. Let him do well in his learning. Let him do well in his davening. Whatever he's into, Hashem, please allow him to succeed. Gentlemen, you say, Hashem, please help my wife. Let her run the house well. Let her be organized. Let her take care of the kids. Do you know what you're doing when you're doing that? First of all, tefillah is extraordinarily effective, number one. But number two, you're davening for a friend. Your friend has a need. And you're actually asking Hashem, please help my friend. Help my husband. Help my wife. And with those words, you're understanding your relationship. You're building your relationship. And this idea of friends, and best friends who love each other, re'em ahuvim, is a definition of a marriage. First and foremost, you have to be a friend. A friend is one who looks out for the welfare of the other. A friend is one who supports the other. A friend is one who's there, one for the other. Okay, good?